Man, something just doesn't feel right about everything that went down. And the more you look at it, the more questions start popping up. It's like the story we were told doesn't fully match what we actually saw on the field, you know? And now, with all these new reports and moves happening, it feels like there's a whole other layer behind the scenes that we weren't supposed to notice at first. So, without further ado, let's get straight to the point. Click the like button and comment. This season is ours. Something is happening behind the scenes in Minnesota. And if you thought the quarterback situation was already complicated, what's coming out now might completely change how you see the last season and what's ahead. According to a recent report, there was a serious disconnect at the top of the organization involving Kevin O'Connell and the direction of the quarterback room. The claim? That O'Connell did not want J.J. McCarthy starting last season and instead pushed for other options like Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, or even Aaron Rodgers. Even more surprising, the report suggests that O'Connell was overruled by the front office, who made the final call to stick with McCarthy. Now pause for a second and really think about what that implies. We're talking about Kevin O'Connell, a coach who, not long ago, was being labeled a quarterback whisperer, a guy whose reputation was skyrocketing after revitalizing Sam Darnold's career. A head coach who just secured a massive extension worth around $18 million per year. And yet, we're supposed to believe that he didn't have the final say on the most important position in football? That's where things start to feel off. Because if this report is accurate, it means the Vikings front office chose to go against their head coach on a franchise-defining decision. But if it's not accurate, then there's another possibility, and it might be even more intriguing. There's a growing belief that this narrative could be coming from O'Connell's camp as a way to distance himself from what went wrong last season. And let's not ignore what actually happened on the field. The Vikings had talent, elite talent. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, a defense coordinated by Brian Flores that consistently held its own. Yet, despite all of that, the offense never reached that elite, top-tier level. Not consistently, not when it mattered most. And when the pressure peaked? Week 18 against the Detroit Lions, with the NFC North and the #1 seed on the line, the offense managed just 9 points. Then, in the wild-card game, 9 points again. That's not just a bad stretch. That's a collapse at the worst possible moment. And yes, J.J. McCarthy struggled. There's no denying that. His performances, combined with injuries, played a major role in derailing the season. But at the same time, you have to look at how he was used. This was a rookie quarterback coming off a torn meniscus, a player whose college success at Michigan was built on a dominant run game. Yet, in Minnesota, there were games where he was dropping back 40, even 50 times, like the 54 attempts against a tough Baltimore defense. Where was the adjustment? Where was the commitment to the run? Instead, it often felt like McCarthy was being left exposed, asked to carry a system that didn't fully adapt to his strengths. And that raises another critical question. How much of that falls on coaching? Because if O'Connell truly didn't want McCarthy starting, then the way the offense was structured starts to look very different. It starts to look like a system that wasn't built for the quarterback it had. But if he did have control, then the responsibility lands squarely on him. And that's why this report matters so much. It's not just about what happened. It's about who's accountable. There's also a pattern here that's hard to ignore. Right before that massive Week 18 game, a report surfaced from Jay Glazer suggesting that O'Connell could seek a trade if he didn't get his extension. That report conveniently added pressure, and shortly after, he got paid. Now, another narrative emerges that separates him from a struggling quarterback decision. Coincidence or calculated? Because if there's one thing becoming clear, it's that Kevin O'Connell's camp knows how to shape a story. And as Vikings fans, you have to decide what you believe. Was O'Connell truly overruled? Or is this an attempt to rewrite how last season is remembered? I want to hear from you. Do you believe Kevin O'Connell didn't have final say on J.J. McCarthy? Or is this just smoke to shift the blame? Drop your take in the comments right now. And this is where everything starts to connect. And at the same time, everything starts to feel even more uncertain for the future of the Minnesota Vikings. Because while all this noise is happening around Kevin O'Connell and what really went down last season, the organization has already begun moving forward, and the direction they're taking tells you a lot. The arrival of Kyler Murray changes everything, not just from a football standpoint, but from a message standpoint. Because you don't bring in a quarterback like Kyler Murray, former #1 overall pick, a Heisman Trophy winner, unless you are fully prepared to shift the identity of your offense, and more importantly, unless you are ready to move on, at least in the short term, from J.J. McCarthy. Let's be honest here. This isn't a competition in the traditional sense. This feels like a transition. A transition that the Vikings may not want to publicly admit yet. Because think about the optics. You invested a top 10 pick in McCarthy. You traded up to get him. You committed resources, time, and belief into his development. Turning around so quickly and saying, "We're going in a different direction," is not something franchises like to do openly. So instead, what do? You bring in a veteran like Carson Wentz, a guy familiar with the system, someone who can support the quarterback room, help in film sessions, and be a steady presence behind the scenes. Not necessarily the future, but a bridge, a stabilizer. And then you bring in Kyler, and suddenly the depth chart starts to tell a story without anyone having to say it out loud. Because if we reach training camp, and Kyler Murray is taking first-team reps consistently, and if preseason reports start to confirm that he's clearly ahead, then the question won't be, who is QB1? The question will be, what is J.J. McCarthy's role now? And that's where things get really interesting. Because despite everything, despite the struggles, despite the injuries, despite the criticism, it still might be too early to completely close the book on McCarthy. He's 23 years old, and in today's NFL, development is not always linear. We've seen quarterbacks take time. We've seen players sit, learn, adjust, and come back stronger. And if there's one scenario where McCarthy could still carve out a future in Minnesota, it's this one. Learning behind a player like Kyler Murray, a quarterback who has experienced the highs and lows of the league, a player who understands what it takes to be a top pick, to carry expectations, and to deal with adversity. That kind of mentorship, if embraced, could be exactly what McCarthy needs. But here's the reality. Time is not unlimited. Because if Kyler performs, if he stabilizes the offense, if he wins games, if he proves to be the answer, then the window for McCarthy shrinks dramatically. And if that happens, the Vikings will face a decision. Do they keep developing him quietly in the background, hoping for a future opportunity? Or do they eventually move on, accepting that the investment didn't pay off the way they envisioned? Right now, trading him doesn't make sense. The value wouldn't match what they gave up. You don't spend a 10th overall pick and then flip that player for a mid-round selection just a couple of years later. That's how franchises set themselves back. But at the same time, the trajectory is clear. This is no longer J.J. McCarthy's team. At least, not today. And maybe not tomorrow either. But the NFL has a way of changing narratives fast. Injuries happen. Performances fluctuate. Opportunities appear when you least expect them. And all it takes is one moment, one stretch of games, for everything to shift again. So while it may feel like the door is closing on McCarthy, it might not be locked just yet. And that's what makes this entire situation so fascinating. Because behind all the reports, all the speculation, all the possible PR moves and internal disagreements, there's still a young quarterback with something to prove. And there's still a fan base trying to understand what direction this team is truly heading. So now I ask you, after everything we just broke down, do you still believe J.J. McCarthy has a future in Minnesota? Or is this already Kyler Murray's team moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get this debate going. And if you made it all the way here, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Vikings coverage you won't find anywhere else. Go Vikings!